CM Punk, Mr. Phil Brooks, yet again, a big part of the news cycle this past week. CM Punk made some headlines over the past 24 hours through a now deleted Instagram story that was responding to a Dave Meltzer post on the Figure 4 message board about Punk's feud with Jon Moxley leading up to All Out 2022. Now, first of all, perhaps important that we show the post from Dave Meltzer on the message board. And Meltzer says, do you know why they didn't advertise Punk versus Moxley longer and why it had a short build? Because Punk agreed to it. Then AEW got a legal letter saying he wasn't down with it and wasn't doing it. And they didn't know if he'd come until Tony put his foot down. There are a lot of nice things I could say about him, and you can absolutely argue his position on Moxley was correct, but you can't argue he willingly did what he was asked in that scenario. And to this, CM Punk, in his now deleted Instagram story, you're going to have a bit of a tough time reading here, but I'll read it out for you. Sigh. I was not cleared to come back to wrestle yet. The plan was to wrestle at the pay-per-view. I sat and listened to Moxley's Rocky 3 idea. I explained how I'd never seen a Rocky movie. I thought the idea sucked, but if the boss wanted to do it, whatever. He said he wouldn't lose to me. I'd never experienced someone refusing to lose to me. I just laughed. I asked Tony if this was what he wanted. He said yes, he's the boss, so I said okay, but I'd need to be cleared first. They kept saying it could just be a squash, and I did need to be cleared. I scoffed at that. My health is more important. Dave Meltzer is a liar. Jericho is a liar and a stooge. There are plans, but plans change, but I'll never put a company above my health ever again. And to this, Chris Jericho has responded with his own IG story of his own Matt Hardy delete GIF. So the biggest question I would say coming out of this, I have for you, Kate. Have you seen a Rocky movie?
I have. And I've seen a few of them. Not a huge fan. I think the original is good. Rocky 3, by that time I'm kind of cold on it. At least it wasn't Rocky 4. I mean, it could have been worse, which one he wanted to emulate. But I get the reference. I'm not... I guess, look, if Punk hasn't seen a Rocky movie, then I hope that someone explained to him what it's not a difficult story to grasp.
I have a feeling he knew exactly what a Rocky 3 was, or at least, he does now, certainly. But your thoughts on this entire thing? Of course, for people who don't remember, the build to All Out consisted of CM Punk losing to Jon Moxley in about 3 minutes on an edition of Dynamite prior. And that set up, of course, the comeback match that we had where Punk won the championship. But any opinions at all about, how any of this has come out and whether or not it impacts your opinion about Punk's future in AEW?
For those who are just listening on the audio feed, I'm really rolling my eyes right now. I'm so done with this story. I desperately just want everyone concerned to shut up. I think that Punk raises a very good point, if true, the idea that he was pressured to perform when he was not medically cleared is a bad thing. Here's the issue. Punk has done a lot to discredit himself with his past complaints about his work at AEW, the story that was sort of circulating that he had resisted this urge to to go partying, that he was trying to sort of tone down the so-called party culture that existed at AEW in a promotion where a large number of the performers are known to be non-drinkers and non-users of recreational drugs. There are a number of things he did like that where it just seems that there was an unforced error. And I think that unfortunately he's raising a very serious issue, but he's already put his own credibility into question. And of course, what happened when he brought this up, about 3,000 people started posting the clip of him on Dynamite that week, hopping around on one foot to show that he was just fine. That does not mean that he was cleared, and it does not mean that he wasn't pressured, but he's very bad with optics. Now, this whole thing that I guess it's never been confirmed that it's Jericho, but I think we're all pretty certain that it's Jericho, and a lot of the sort of counter stories to Punk's narrative have come in a tone that looks almost similar. Like you can almost hear them in Chris Jericho's voice. He needs to stop. Let's sort of say if, as he's alleged, he is the person behind these errors. He needs to stop. He's making himself look bad. He's making his company look bad. And maybe it does come from a place of wanting to stand up for the company he works for, but it's just gotten so dumb at this point. And I already just hated this whole sort of meltdown at All Out, and everything that happened there was just embarrassing for all concerned. And at this point, I cringe every time I see that one of these things is trending on Twitter, every time I see that there's another story that's come out involving it. It's like these people lack any sense of self-awareness of how idiotic they look. And so I understand with what Meltzer's doing, that he feels an obligation to sort of share these bits of gossip, really, that come his way. And it's one of the reasons that people tune into his forum. But for God's sake, don't feed the troll anymore. These people have shown themselves to be incapable of adult discourse. The only person I think who has come out of any of this looking at all good is actually Britt Baker, who did a very good interview where she addressed what had happened without trying to point fingers, and about how sad it made her for the promotion, because she's really happy there and she believes in what they're doing. And that is literally the only time I've seen someone behave like an adult in this situation. I think that the smarter people have declined to comment, and that the level of discourse you're getting on this subject is so weak. And someone, I want to say, needs to be the bigger man, but it feels like the men in this situation aren't doing so well. So guys, just toughen up. You've had your fight. You're never going to be able to litigate this in the court of public opinion. People have already made up their minds, and nothing that you say is doing any good. So please just stop.
It certainly felt like there was maybe a bit of a cooling off period that allowed maybe the audience at least to entertain the idea of Punk perhaps coming back at some point in the near future. Like certainly I feel like that thought has been stronger maybe, prior to this week than it has been since the entire thing happened. This certainly, certainly takes that away, I would say. I don't have such an issue with, maybe CM Punk, like, and even to defend Dave. Like Dave was, I don't personally know the context in which he responded to the person on his message board about this. Dave did also earlier this week, comment on Punk talking about the Steve Kern Coco Beware brawl, and I'm sure this was maybe brought up because of that entire thing. Anyway, it's Dave's message board. Like he should be able to say whatever he wants. But because Dave's stature, whatever he says is going to be published out there, and it's going to turn bigger. And you know what? Like if Punk had read this on his message board, he probably wouldn't have been too happy either. So Punk is right to go out there on his own social media to say something about news that he believes is not right. What I don't necessarily think is a smart move is to specifically name people and to add in lines such as, he didn't want a job to me. I had never run into that before. Like there are certainly more diplomatic ways of, I think, putting it all out there. I also feel like even if he's sure that Chris Jericho is the person leaking the news, is there concrete proof? Maybe he has it. Maybe he actually does. Maybe he has reason to put it. But on the surface, that's speculation. And do you want a guy who's already in this much hot water engaging in speculation for a potential fellow roster member that he might be a part of a roster he might be a part of again?
I think it's pretty clear he doesn't want to be a part of it again. And yes, to agree with you, obviously Dave is free to say whatever he wants on his forum, and it's one of the reasons that people go there. I guess at some point, though, when you have a group of people where no one is willing to just let it go and just be the person who takes the high road, you have to wonder clearly everything that's happening is doing more damage to AEW and really more damage, I think, to the broader industry than it is. There's no good coming of this. And I noticed someone in the chat room was also kind of was mentioning Dax Harwood getting involved in this and sort of injecting his own opinions, which is true. I don't like to think of a couple of people who are still employees, who are still drawing a paycheck from this company, who seem to be actively trying to bring it down. But it's hard to read what they're doing as anything other than that, because it does seem that the stories keep resurfacing when something goes well. And if they have issues with the company, I totally understand why they want to leave, why they want to get out. And when they're gone, I fully expect they'll be able to talk about all of the indignities that they suffered. I find this very immature, and this kind of like unwillingness to just let something go. And this is on both sides. I don't mean to target one side over the other, because clearly no one is just, there's this desperation not to let the other side get the last word. That, like I said, it's embarrassing at this point, and I find it. I'm embarrassed for them, but they should be embarrassed for themselves. I think that, again, with this Instagram story, I was talking about how Punk undercuts himself a lot. He basically goes through, and he seems to confirm every single thing that Dave Meltzer said in his post, and then says he's a liar. I don't know how to interpret that. It's weird. And then to say that Moxley was unwilling to job to him. Well, he lost to you the next week at the pay-per-view. So was the idea that the story would be enhanced by Punk winning twice? Mm-hmm. How did that serve anything? Or that he just did not want to do this short match at all? I think it was a very divisive thing. And for my part, I actually thought it worked because he introduced just this sliver of doubt that Punk could lose at All Out. But it without that, it looked very much like a coronation. If he really didn't want to, and if he felt that he was at medical risk by doing this short match beforehand, then yeah, he was absolutely, and he should push back against that kind of thing. Everyone should. It seems weird. It's like, okay, he was not cleared for that one. He was cleared to do a much longer match a week later. Moxley wouldn't job to him. He did lose. It's sort of, and again, I'm not trying to say that he's wrong about some central points. It's just that he kills his own credibility because of the way that he approaches things.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if you're Tony Khan, and I imagine Tony is still very much wanting to entertain the idea of being able to have everybody reunite, having CM Punk on his TV show and as a character that he could promote again. But how do you respond to something like this? You know, a post like this points the finger at you and your company for wanting to put a guy out there who's not cleared. You know, even if it's in a squash. I mean, it makes your company look pretty bad in a way that's not too dissimilar from that press conference. What do you think? What would you do if you're Tony Khan at this point? Do you just continue to let this thing cool down, or do you actively take a stand at some point?
I think that he's at a disadvantage because the people around him aren't letting it cool down. I think that he can talk to the people who are taking his side, maybe Chris Jericho, maybe others, and he can tell them to cool it. But he has no control, clearly has never had any control over what Punk is doing or saying. And so he may just have to keep taking these bullets. I think that there may be something, there may be an advantage to saying that he was not pressuring Punk to deny that accusation outright, and with the caveat that if Punk had felt pressured to perform, then that was a terrible mistake on his part, and is certainly nothing that he would want to repeat. However, like I said, it's just that this whole thing has been such a garbage fire that it seems like even to give it to give it enough oxygen to keep going by responding to it is asking for problems. And I think, to Tony's credit, there is maybe there are legal reasons, maybe not. I think he has, to some extent, tried to remain at a bit of a distance and remain neutral. Unfortunately, the way this story is unfolding, it's very salacious. It's people want to know all the dirty details, and therefore Tony's come in for a lot of criticism for doing what may be just taking the high road and not commenting on it. And I think that people are so eager for gossip. They want to know the tea. And unfortunately,
if I was Tony, I don't know if I would comment on this particular situation, just because, like you said, Kate, why get dragged in to this dumpster fire? At some point, maybe it is expected that he would have to comment on CM Punk, but maybe not this week. Worry about Supercard. Get your shows out there and just answer and change people's opinions about AEW as a whole by just continuing to give them good wrestling. What did he do that?
And I think that he's done that in the last several months, probably more than he gets credit for. But it's such a mess. And I think what bothers me the most is that it makes it look like having a much more tyrannical boss, someone who simply will not tolerate any kind of dissent, is the only way in which a company can function.
Our WrestleMania bonus coverage, if you sign up to the Post Wrestling Cafe tonight, you will get John Pollock and John Cena's Impact Sacrifice post-show. Your membership will also get you access to all of our WrestleMania week bonus coverage beginning on Monday. This includes bonus podcasts available Monday to Friday, all of next week. Our first one coming out on Monday with special guest Speedball Mike Bailey. And just confirmed also on Monday's show, Nick Hausman of the newly formed House of Wrestling website, getting his take on the latest with CM Punk, will also be joining us. So that is postwrestlingcafe.com, also video.postwrestling.com. And if you're an Apple Podcast exclusive user, well, first, I still recommend signing up on the Patreon because you can use our RSS feed in Apple Podcasts. But if you don't like to go through all that hassle, just simply sign up through Apple Podcasts itself. It costs a little bit more because they take a bit more off of the each membership, but it gives you that level of convenience. So hope you guys join us next week.